Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Muniba Mazari and you're watching Rise and Inspire YouTube channel. Sometimes the world reminds us how fragile human life truly is. Not through wars, not through earthquakes, but through something so tiny that we cannot even see it with our eyes. A virus. Today, I want to talk about the Hanta Virus, a disease many people had never heard of until outbreaks started making headlines around the world. And yet, behind every headline, there is fear, confusion, and a very important lesson for humanity. You see, history has taught us something repeatedly: human beings are powerful. But nature is always more powerful. The Hanta virus is not new. Scientists have known about it for decades. It spreads mainly through contact with infected rodents, especially rats and mice. Their saliva, urine, and droppings can carry the virus. Sometimes, even breathing contaminated air in closed spaces can infect a person. And this is what makes it frightening. Not because it spreads like wildfire from human to human in most cases, because generally it does not, but because it hides in ordinary places, in cabins, in storage rooms, in abandoned buildings, in places people consider harmless. Most people think danger arrives loudly. They imagine alarms, chaos, or visible warnings before something harmful enters their lives. But some of the greatest threats in human history have arrived silently, hidden in ordinary places people never suspected. The Hanta virus is one of those silent dangers. It does not spread through giant disasters or dramatic scenes. Instead, it often begins with something small and unnoticed. Rodents living close to human environments. Rats and mice have existed around humans for centuries. They hide in roofs, basements, farms, old buildings, storage rooms, and abandoned spaces. In many parts of the world, people barely notice them anymore because they have become such a common part of daily life. But what many people do not realize is that these tiny creatures can carry viruses capable of causing severe illness in humans. The Hanta virus mainly spreads through infected rodent urine, saliva, and droppings. When these substances dry, tiny virus particles can mix into the air. A person may simply sweep a dusty floor, clean an old attic, open a storage container, or enter a poorly ventilated room without realizing that the air around them may contain dangerous particles. And with one breath, infection can begin. That is what makes this virus so frightening. It hides in ordinary moments. Imagine a farmer cleaning a barn after months. Imagine a traveler entering an old cabin in the woods. Imagine a family opening a locked storeroom that has not been touched for years. None of these people expect danger. None of them wake up thinking their lives are about to change. Yet sometimes, the smallest unseen particles can become the beginning of a medical emergency. Nature often reminds humanity that we are deeply connected to our environment. When hygiene is ignored, when rodents multiply uncontrollably, when living spaces become unsafe, diseases find opportunities to spread. The Hanta virus teaches us that health is not only about hospitals and medicines. It is also about cleanliness, awareness, and prevention in our everyday surroundings. In many cases, people become infected because they simply do not know the risk exists. Someone may sweep rat droppings with a broom, causing contaminated dust to rise into the air. Another person may touch contaminated surfaces and then unknowingly touch their mouth or nose. Some infections happen in workplaces, farms, forests, or rural areas where rodent exposure is more common. The danger is often invisible, and invisibility creates carelessness. But knowledge changes everything. When people understand how the virus spreads, they begin to protect themselves differently. They learn to wear gloves and masks while cleaning potentially contaminated spaces. They learn to ventilate closed areas before entering. They learn not to directly touch rodent waste. Simple actions, which once seemed unnecessary, suddenly become life-saving habits. What is important to understand is that rodents themselves do not look dangerous. They continue moving through walls, corners, and dark spaces exactly as they always have. The virus cannot be identified by appearance alone. A healthy-looking rodent may still carry infection. That reality reminds us why prevention matters more than assumptions. The spread of Hanta virus through rodents also reveals a larger truth about humanity. Sometimes people ignore small problems until they become dangerous. A tiny infestation becomes normal. An unclean space becomes acceptable. Warning signs are dismissed because they seem minor. But health crises often begin with the things people choose not to notice, and perhaps that is the biggest lesson hidden inside this virus. The smallest things in life can carry the greatest consequences. One unseen particle, one careless moment, one neglected environment. Yet on the other side of fear lies responsibility. Communities that stay informed, maintain hygiene, control rodent populations, and educate others can greatly reduce the risk of infection. Awareness transforms fear into action. It gives people the power to protect themselves and the people they love. Because sometimes survival does not depend on strength alone. Sometimes survival depends on paying attention to the small things before they become life-changing problems. One of the most dangerous things about certain diseases is not how deadly they are in the beginning, but how ordinary they appear. The Hanta virus does not usually arrive with dramatic warning signs that immediately force people to panic. Instead, it often begins quietly, disguising itself as something familiar and harmless, the common flu. And that similarity becomes one of the greatest reasons why the illness can become so dangerous before people even realize what is happening inside their bodies. At first, an infected person may simply feel tired. The body becomes weak, energy disappears, and ordinary tasks suddenly feel exhausting. Then comes fever, muscle pain, headaches, chills, and body aches. These are symptoms millions of people experience every year during seasonal illnesses. Because of this, many individuals assume they only need rest, medicine for fever, or a few days at home to recover. But sometimes, what looks ordinary is hiding something serious. This is the frightening part about the early stage of the Hanta virus. The symptoms do not immediately reveal the severity of the infection. A person may continue working, traveling, or interacting with others while believing they only have a temporary sickness. Families may not worry. Friends may not notice anything unusual. Even patients themselves may ignore the signs because they resemble conditions people have experienced many times before. Human beings often underestimate illnesses that feel familiar. We become comfortable with symptoms we recognize. A headache seems manageable. Fever feels temporary. Body pain feels normal after stress or exhaustion. That sense of familiarity creates delay, and in some cases, delay becomes dangerous. The body, however, is quietly fighting a battle inside. While the infected person assumes recovery is near, the virus may continue affecting vital systems. This is why medical awareness is so important. Diseases do not always announce themselves loudly. Some arrive wearing the mask of something simple, making it difficult for both patients and families to understand the urgency of the situation. There is also an emotional side to this experience. When people feel early flu-like symptoms, they often convince themselves everything is under control. They continue daily routines because stopping feels unnecessary. Some avoid medical care because they fear overreacting. Others cannot afford to miss work or responsibilities. Many people wait until symptoms become unbearable before seeking help. Unfortunately, by the time severe breathing problems begin, the condition may already have progressed significantly. This pattern is not unique to the Hanta virus. Humanity has repeatedly faced illnesses that started with mild symptoms before becoming life-threatening. Yet people continue to trust appearances more than caution. We assume that if something feels common, it must be safe. But nature does not always work that way. What makes the situation even more challenging is that early symptoms can vary from person to person. Some people may experience intense fatigue first. Others may notice dizziness, nausea, or stomach discomfort. In many cases, the signs appear slowly, making it difficult to recognize a serious pattern. This uncertainty increases confusion, especially in areas where awareness about the virus is limited. And this is where education becomes powerful. When communities understand that flu, like symptoms after possible rodent exposure, should not be ignored, people become more alert. Awareness encourages earlier medical attention. It helps individuals connect their symptoms with possible environmental risks. Someone who recently cleaned an old storage room, visited a rodent-infested area, or handled contaminated materials may realize that their simple flu deserves serious attention. The human body has an incredible ability to survive, but survival often depends on timing. Early recognition of illness can mean faster treatment, better medical care, and greater chances of recovery. Ignoring warning signs because they appear ordinary can allow a dangerous condition to grow silently. Perhaps this teaches us an important lesson beyond medicine itself. Not everything dangerous looks frightening in the beginning. Some of life's greatest challenges arrive disguised as ordinary moments. A small symptom, a little exhaustion, a mild fever, things people brush aside every single day, yet hidden beneath those ordinary experiences may be a serious battle unfolding silently within the body. And that is why awareness matters so deeply. Because sometimes the difference between safety and tragedy begins with whether people choose to pay attention to the small signs their body is trying to reveal. At the beginning, the illness may seem manageable. A person may believe they are dealing with nothing more than fever, weakness, or body pain. They may expect rest and medicine to solve the problem within a few days. But in severe cases of Hanta virus, the situation can suddenly change in terrifying ways. What begins as ordinary discomfort can turn into a serious struggle for breath, transforming a simple illness into a life-threatening medical emergency. The lungs are among the most important organs in the human body. Every breath a person takes carries oxygen that keeps the brain active, the heart beating, and the body alive. Most people never think about breathing because it happens naturally every second of their lives. But when the lungs begin to fail, even the smallest breath can feel like climbing a mountain. This is what makes severe Hanta virus infection so dangerous. In some patients, the virus attacks the respiratory system and causes fluid to build up in the lungs. Slowly, the lungs lose their ability to deliver enough oxygen to the body. Breathing becomes harder. The chest feels heavy. Simple movements become exhausting. A person who is walking normally one day may suddenly struggle to speak or stand the next. And perhaps the most frightening part is how quickly the condition can worsen. Many illnesses progress slowly, giving people time to react and prepare. But severe Hanta virus cases can escalate rapidly. Someone who seemed stable hours earlier may suddenly require emergency medical care. Families often experience shock because they do not expect flu-like symptoms to transform into a breathing crisis so quickly. When the lungs are affected, fear becomes very real. There is something deeply terrifying about not being able to breathe properly. Human beings can survive hunger for days. They can survive exhaustion, pain, and many hardships. But when air itself becomes difficult to reach, panic enters the mind immediately. Every breath becomes precious. Every second feels uncertain. Doctors and medical teams often have to provide oxygen support or intensive care to help patients survive severe respiratory complications. Hospitals become places where machines assist the body in doing what once felt effortless, breathing. This reality reminds humanity how fragile life truly is. One invisible virus can suddenly make the most basic human function feel impossible. The emotional impact on families is also enormous. Watching a loved one struggle for air creates helplessness no words can fully describe. Families wait outside hospital rooms praying for improvement, wishing they could somehow carry the suffering themselves. Medical workers fight tirelessly to stabilize patients, often knowing that every hour matters. But beyond fear, there's also an important lesson hidden within these severe cases. The body gives warnings before collapse happens. Symptoms may begin mildly, but they should never be ignored when they worsen rapidly. Difficulty breathing, chest tightness, severe weakness, or sudden respiratory distress are signs that require immediate medical attention. Awareness can save lives because recognizing danger early allows doctors to respond faster. The effect of Hanta virus on the lungs also teaches humanity something humbling about health. People spend years chasing money, success recognition, and endless goals, yet few stop to appreciate the simple blessing of breathing freely. Most individuals only realize the value of a healthy breath when breathing becomes painful or uncertain. Sometimes life's greatest gifts are the things people notice the least. Air, breath, normal moments. Severe illness forces people to confront realities they usually ignore. It strips away illusions of control and reminds humanity that the human body, despite its strength, remains vulnerable to forces invisible to the eye. Yet even in the middle of suffering, hope continues to exist. Medical science keeps improving. Awareness keeps growing. Doctors, researchers, and healthcare workers continue searching for better treatments and faster responses. Communities learn from outbreaks. Families become more cautious. Knowledge spreads, and with knowledge comes the possibility of prevention and survival. Because while severe cases of Hanta virus can affect the lungs in devastating ways, they also reveal something powerful about human beings. Even when breathing becomes difficult, people continue fighting for life with extraordinary courage. And perhaps courage is most visible not when life feels easy, but when every breath becomes a battle worth fighting for. Human beings often live with the belief that modern medicine has an answer for almost everything. Hospitals are filled with advanced machines. Scientists work in sophisticated laboratories. And technology continues to grow faster every year. Because of this progress, many people assume that every dangerous disease already has a cure waiting somewhere on a shelf. But the reality is very different. The Hanta virus reminds the world that despite all scientific achievements, humanity still faces illnesses for which there is no specific universal cure. And that truth is deeply humbling. When someone becomes seriously ill, one of the first questions families ask is, what medicine can cure this? People naturally search for certainty because certainty brings comfort. A cure feels like hope wrapped inside a solution. But with Hanta virus, doctors mainly focus on supportive care rather than a guaranteed treatment that directly eliminates the disease in every case. This means medical teams often help the body survive while it fights the virus itself. Patients may receive oxygen support, fluids, careful monitoring, and intensive medical attention depending on the severity of their condition. In serious respiratory cases, doctors work to stabilize breathing and maintain oxygen levels. The goal is to support vital organs and give the patient's immune system the best possible chance to recover. For many people, this reality is difficult to accept. Humanity has become accustomed to quick solutions. We live in a world where people expect immediate answers, fast recoveries, and instant results. But viruses do not always obey human expectations. Nature continues to remind us that some battles require patience, resilience, and ongoing scientific effort. The absence of a universal cure does not mean doctors are powerless. It means medicine is still learning. Throughout history, many diseases once considered mysterious or untreatable eventually became manageable because scientists refused to stop searching for answers. Every outbreak teaches researchers something new. Every patient helps medical experts understand the virus more deeply. Science moves forward through observation, study, and persistence, even when certainty does not yet exist. But emotionally, uncertainty creates fear. When people hear there is no guaranteed cure, panic often follows. Fear spreads quickly because uncertainty feels dangerous. Families worry more intensely. Communities become anxious. Some individuals lose hope before treatment even begins. Yet history has also shown that human beings are capable of surviving extraordinary medical challenges, even in the absence of perfect cures. Hope does not disappear simply because answers are incomplete. In fact, some of the greatest strengths humanity possesses appear during uncertainty. Doctors continue working long hours despite difficult cases. Researchers dedicate years of their lives studying viruses they still do not fully understand. Nurses care for frightened patients with compassion and courage. Families stand beside loved ones even when outcomes remain uncertain. That is the hidden power of humanity. People continue fighting even when certainty does not exist. The Hanta virus also teaches an important lesson about prevention. When there is no universally approved cure, avoiding infection becomes even more critical. Awareness, hygiene, rodent control, and early medical attention become the strongest forms of protection. Sometimes the most powerful medical strategy is not treatment after illness begins, but prevention before illness ever starts. And perhaps this shifts the way people think about health itself. Many individuals only value prevention after witnessing suffering. People often ignore safety measures because danger feels distant or unlikely. But diseases without clear cures force humanity to recognize the importance of responsibility. Cleaning environments properly, reducing rodent exposure, and staying informed suddenly become acts of survival rather than simple precautions. There is also a deeper emotional truth hidden within this struggle. The absence of a cure reminds humanity that we are not invincible. No amount of wealth, fame, or power can fully protect people from the realities of nature. Viruses do not care about status or success. They expose the vulnerabilities shared by all human beings. And while that realization may feel frightening, it can also create humility, compassion, and unity. People begin to understand how connected they truly are. Scientists in different countries collaborate. Doctors share medical knowledge. Communities support one another. Families pray for strangers they have never met. Sometimes uncertainty brings humanity closer together than certainty ever could. The story of Hanta virus is not only about what medicine has not yet achieved. It is also about the determination of people who continue searching, learning, treating, and hoping despite incomplete answers. Because progress in medicine has never been built on perfection from the beginning. It has always been built on human beings refusing to surrender in the face of the unknown. People often wait for danger to arrive before they begin taking life seriously. They ignore warnings when everything feels normal. They delay action because nothing bad has happened yet. But diseases like the Hanta virus teach humanity an important truth. Sometimes the greatest protection is not found in hospitals after infection happens, but in prevention before the danger ever begins. Prevention may seem simple, ordinary, even boring to some people. Cleaning spaces, maintaining hygiene, controlling rodents, wearing protective equipment, and following safety guidelines do not appear dramatic or heroic. Yet these small actions can save lives in ways many people never fully realize. The Hanta virus spreads mainly through infected rodent urine, saliva, and droppings. This means the environment people live and work in plays a major role in reducing risk. A clean space is not only about appearance. It is about safety. It is about protecting families from invisible dangers hidden in dust, corners, storage rooms, and neglected areas. Many people underestimate how quickly unsafe conditions can become dangerous. A few rodents in a building may seem harmless at first. A small infestation may not feel urgent. But diseases do not always announce themselves loudly. Sometimes they grow quietly in places people ignore. An old attic, a dark basement, an abandoned shed, or a closed storage room can slowly become environments where infection risks increase without anyone noticing. This is why awareness matters so much. When people understand how the virus spreads, they begin to approach ordinary tasks differently. Cleaning no longer feels like routine work. It becomes an act of protection. Ventilating closed spaces before entering, wearing gloves and masks while cleaning potentially contaminated areas, avoiding direct contact with rodent waste. These actions may appear small, but together they create a barrier between human beings and serious illness. Prevention is powerful because it gives people control before fear begins. Once infection spreads, uncertainty takes over. Families panic. Doctors race against time. Patients suffer physically and emotionally. But prevention reduces the chance of reaching that painful stage. It transforms fear into responsibility and replaces helplessness with action. There is also a deeper lesson hidden inside preventive measures. Human beings often search for complicated solutions while ignoring simple habits that protect health every day. People admire advanced medical technology, but sometimes survival begins with basic discipline. Cleanliness, caution, and consistency. The truth is, small habits shape large outcomes. A person who keeps living spaces clean may never know they avoided infection. A family that controls rodent populations may never realize the danger they prevented. Prevention often works silently. Unlike dramatic medical recoveries, preventive actions rarely make headlines. Yet their impact can be enormous because the greatest victories are sometimes the tragedies that never happen. Communities also play an important role in prevention. Health is not only an individual responsibility. Unsafe environments affect entire neighborhoods, workplaces, and public spaces. When awareness spreads through communities, protection becomes stronger for everyone. People educate each other. Families teach children proper hygiene. Local authorities improve sanitation. Workers learn safer cleaning practices. Prevention becomes a shared effort instead of a personal burden. And this unity matters because diseases remind humanity that people are deeply connected. One neglected environment can create risks for many others. But one informed and responsible community can also reduce suffering for countless lives. There is something hopeful about prevention because it proves that people are not powerless. Even without a universal cure, human beings still possess the ability to reduce danger through awareness and responsible action. Prevention empowers ordinary people to become active protectors of their own health. Perhaps that is why prevention deserves more respect than it often receives. It requires discipline before fear. It requires responsibility before crisis. It requires wisdom before suffering. And those choices are not always easy because human beings naturally focus on immediate comfort rather than invisible risks. Yet history repeatedly proves that prevention saves more lives than panic ever will. The Hanta virus reminds the world that survival is not only about fighting illness after it appears. Sometimes survival begins much earlier, in the quiet decisions people make every single day. A cleaned room, a repaired wall, a protected environment, a careful habit. Simple actions that may seem ordinary, yet carry the power to protect human life long before danger has the chance to enter. Fear spreads faster than facts. The moment people hear the word outbreak, panic often begins before understanding does. Rumors move from one person to another. Social media becomes filled with confusion. And anxiety starts controlling minds more than truth. This is something humanity has witnessed again and again during health crises. And when it comes to diseases like the Hanta virus, fear can sometimes become almost as dangerous as the illness itself. Fear has a strange effect on people. It makes them imagine the worst before they understand reality. Some begin believing every rumor they hear. Others isolate themselves emotionally. becoming overwhelmed by anxiety and hopelessness. In many cases, panic leads to poor decisions because frightened minds struggle to think clearly. But awareness changes everything. Awareness gives people knowledge, and knowledge brings clarity. When individuals understand how the Hanta virus spreads, what symptoms to watch for, and how prevention works, fear loses much of its power. Suddenly, the situation no longer feels like a mysterious, invisible monster. It becomes a challenge that can be approached with caution, responsibility, and intelligence. This is why education is one of humanity's greatest defenses during any outbreak. A person who understands the risks of rodent exposure behaves differently. They clean carefully. They ventilate closed spaces. They use protective equipment when necessary. They seek medical help earlier if symptoms appear. Awareness transforms panic into practical action. Fear alone cannot protect people. In fact, uncontrolled fear often creates more confusion. During outbreaks, false information spreads quickly because frightened people desperately search for answers. One rumor becomes another rumor. Exaggerated stories create unnecessary panic. Some individuals begin mistrusting doctors, scientists, or medical advice because emotions overpower logic. This is where awareness becomes truly powerful. It separates truth from noise. Medical experts study diseases carefully for a reason. Science may not always have every answer immediately, but it provides understanding based on evidence rather than emotion. Awareness encourages people to listen to reliable information instead of becoming trapped in fear-driven reactions. There is also a deeply emotional side to awareness. When people understand a disease properly, they often become calmer and stronger mentally. They stop feeling completely helpless. They realize that precautions exist, medical support exists, and prevention is possible. Awareness restores a sense of control that fear tries to steal away. Because at its core, fear thrives in darkness and uncertainty. The less people know, the more terrifying situations appear. But once understanding enters the picture, even serious dangers become easier to face. This does not mean the risk disappears. It means the human mind becomes capable of responding wisely instead of reacting emotionally. The Hanta virus teaches humanity an important lesson about responsibility in the age of information. Today, people have access to news instantly. Information travels across the world within seconds. But not all information is accurate. Some headlines are designed to create panic rather than understanding. Some online discussions spread misinformation that harms communities instead of helping them. That is why awareness requires effort. People must learn to question rumors, verify facts, and seek trusted medical guidance. Awareness is not simply hearing information. It is understanding the difference between truth and fear-based exaggeration. Communities become stronger when awareness replaces panic. Families support each other better. Healthcare systems function more effectively. Individuals take practical precautions without becoming consumed by anxiety. Fear divides people emotionally, but awareness often brings people together through shared understanding and responsibility. And perhaps that is one of the most beautiful things about human resilience. People are capable of learning even during difficult times. Doctors educate patients. Scientists share research. Teachers spread knowledge. Parents protect children through information and guidance. Hope grows where awareness exists because understanding creates confidence. This does not mean people should ignore danger or act carelessly. Serious diseases deserve serious attention. But there is a difference between caution and panic. Awareness allows people to remain careful without losing peace of mind. The human mind is powerful. It can either become trapped by fear or strengthened by understanding. Outbreaks reveal both sides of humanity. Panic on one side and wisdom on the other. And history repeatedly shows that societies survive crises not because fear disappears completely, but because awareness becomes stronger than fear itself. Because when people choose knowledge over panic, truth over rumors, and responsibility over chaos, they discover something extraordinary. An informed mind is far more powerful than a frightened one.